Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining the Boardroom Club today to our AI Summit, featuring executives from top tech companies revolutionizing the world as we speak. My name is Yossi Garmazi, and I'm joined here also by two good friends of mine, Álvaro Jiménez and Amado Vargas. Álvaro?
Happy to be here. Great to be here.
Yes, so today we are fortunate enough to interview none other than Tomer Weingarten, co-founder and CEO of SentinelOne, a company that revolutionizing the cybersecurity space by using cutting-edge AI tools to autonomously detect, prevent, and respond to cyber threats in real time. SentinelOne was built using AI before it was even a thing. And most recently at the RSA conference, they launched the next big evolution of their Purple AI platform called Athena, which brings agentic AI capability to the security teams. So, Tomer, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, absolutely. My pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tomer, I thought to start first of all, if you can tell us what led you to actually move to the founder mode, because at the beginning you were a software engineer, and only then you started to build all of your companies.
To an extent, I always loved building software and building products. And as I was kind of starting my journey in the tech world, then these two things for me were the same. I mean, both being a founder and being an engineer, that was the only way for me to create something. So even through the first company I ever started, I basically did everything, right? I built the backend, the front end, the logic, the database, the algorithms, the design. So it was really more of a one-man or a two-man band that we've had and we bootstrapped. So I think from there, you see how the lines can be a bit blurry between, am I an engineer? Am I a founder? When things are small, it's all one of the same, if you ask me. But I really enjoyed coding. I really enjoyed designing products. I think that with the years, I discovered that that's probably my biggest passion, is just like creating something. And I think that was a great starting point for me, not only because I had the technical ability and still have the technical ability to understand fundamentally what I'm building, how it can be built, and in some ways how it can be scaled. So I still believe today that every entrepreneur or founder that is coming from a true deep technical background will always possess a certain advantage over somebody that's not. And I think that served me even through my years with SentinelOne. And SentinelOne, I started obviously as the CEO, but with that over time, I was also serving as the acting CTO. I think it was 5 years leading to the IPO. I was actually also the acting CTO. I was the acting VP of product for a number of years. I was the acting VP of R&D for a number of years. So all of those I enjoyed. All of those I think were great for me to get even more intimate with what we were building and what we were envisioning that SentinelOne can become. So again, to me, it's one of the same, if you ask me, or at least it has been through my journey.
And something pretty unique about your story is that, okay, now everybody know you for cyber SentinelOne, right? But you actually founded companies across different industries, from media to market research, and now, of course, is SentinelOne in cybersecurity. But what did you learn from previous experience before SentinelOne that helped you to catapult SentinelOne to another level?
It's funny because cybersecurity, it's such a fascinating topic, and it's something that you can't learn anyplace, right? There's no university for cybersecurity per se. And it's a very broad-based topic. To me, what's interesting is that it always comes back to first principles and critical thinking. And I think in my teen years, I've done my fair share of hacking and all for fun and games. So I always loved, I think, this tension between securing systems and vulnerabilities and how you kind of think about the world and the underbelly that is, that's there that none of us really think of. So cybersecurity was always a very intriguing thing for me. I think throughout my years, and what I found the most fascinating through my school years and then pursued also independently, was actually physics and quantum physics. So I'm not a cybersecurity classic, I think, practitioner by any degree, but I thought that a lot of the same principles still apply. And even the stuff I've done before was always in and around machine learning algorithms, or more accurately, statistical analysis, because In my days with market research, we tried building more and more predictive algorithms to figure out what people are thinking, right? That's the job of market research at the end of the day. And in the time that I had a slight stint with media and advertising, it was all about parsing videos, parsing intent, and trying to serve the most converting ad out there. So I always had, I think, a fascination to statistical significance, algorithms. And when we started thinking about SentinelOne, I think what was really interesting is that circa 2013, there was really no machine learning predictive algorithms to deal with advanced persistent threats, which were something that was becoming much more prevalent. And if you looked at the state of the art in the space back then, obviously what was deployed on endpoints was the antivirus software, which we thought honestly was comical. It was really something that cannot protect from anything formidable, not even 10 years ago. And then people were trying to deploy other measures on the network side of the house, like firewalls and then sandboxes and all kinds of different things that were just not effective because they were not running on the actual machine the attackers were trying to compromise. So we thought, how can we, or can we, build a system that can monitor what's happening on any given device in real time and then decipher just by the behavior, the events, what's actually happening on that device, whether something bad is going on or something good is going on. And the only way to do that is by crunching the data and running algorithms and trying to figure out if you can establish malicious from benign as far as real time or as fast as real time. So you're not only in a position to detect that something bad is happening, but if you do it fast enough, then you're also in the position to stop it. Because if you understand that something is going on fast enough, you can interject, you can prevent. And if there's any damage that happened, maybe you can even remediate that damage because you followed the trail. Now, can you do all of that without hampering system performance and user experience and not having like a ton of false positives? You have to be really, really accurate. Otherwise, you're starting to shut down critical functions on these devices. So there were a lot of, I think, big questions to answer, and the thesis was amazing, but can you actually do it? And I'm really like constantly and forever impressed by the fact that all of these great ideas actually took hold. And today, this is something that's running on tens of millions of workloads and endpoints around the world. In some of the most critical environments out there, this is what regulates what runs and what doesn't run. So obviously, that was a huge undertaking, but that just also shows you the power of machine learning, the power of what we call AI today. It was there 10 years ago, I think in a more structured fashion, in a more maybe in a narrower scope, but the same type of principle, the same neural networks, not transformers, but same neural networks, I think were very, very useful 10 years ago. And obviously now we see, I think, the advent of what they can also do for us humans going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tomer, everybody knows now SentinelOne, but back then it was only a startup and you competed with all the giants like McAfee and Symantec that dominated the market. Could you share with us how you landed your, let's say, first major customers and how was the process like to get so much market share from them?
Yeah, I think what was even more complex was convincing the venture capital community that you can build something that will disrupt these two giants in an industry that has been dormant, honestly, for the 10 previous years, right? I mean, it was only them. There was really not much innovation, very, very prevalent. Everybody has an antivirus. How are you even going to go about displacing those? Because since the early days of SentinelOne, we didn't think that we're going to be there to augment them or deploy something else alongside them. We fully believe that it might not happen day one, but we will build something that will replace them and will make them obsolete in many, many ways. And that was a tough sell. That was a really tough sell because you're sitting there, two nice guys just landed from Israel and moved to Silicon Valley and nobody knows us. And we're coming in and we're saying, we got this amazing prototype that can detect any type of malware with no prior knowledge and no signatures and no indicators and just throw whatever you want at it As long as it's actually exhibiting badness, our algorithm should be able to catch it. While the demo was really, really impressive and the prototype did work, I think it was a huge question mark for these people on how you go about selling to Fortune 500 this whole new thing, and the amount of trust I think you would have to build, not only in your technology, but in the entire operation to go about and take something as critical as endpoint protection, which is really the last line, maybe the first line, maybe both of defense for most of these companies. That was a huge question mark, I think, for people that were looking to invest in the space more generally. Deployment is hard. It's a software component. It's not something that's just, hey, let's turn it on in the cloud and it's deployed. No, you have to install it and uninstall the previous one and policies and all that stuff. I think that was a really, really hard part, I remember. But with customers, going back to your question, I think it was a little bit more straightforward because they felt the pain. Like they were getting hacked every single day. And they were seeing how ineffective the antivirus was. So everybody was kind of clamoring to some silver bullet type solution, which I'm not saying that we were, but suddenly they could see the light. I mean, they could see something different that is actually able to stop all these things in a very high proficiency rate in a manner that an antivirus couldn't. Talking to initial customers was actually much more straightforward. Convincing them that this can then work at scale and accuracy and all that stuff, I think all of them understood that's going to be a journey. But I think the promise in the core technology resonated so deeply that it was, I would say, relatively the easier part. Not easy by any degree, but definitely easier than, I think, convincing folks that something like this can even exist and how you go against somebody that's a $10-20 billion market cap company like McAfee or Symantec or any of these folks. But again, I think customers were very open to try something else given the pain was really there.
Yeah, and but let's say after you did start to convince all of the customers, has the go-to-market strategy evolved significantly over time, or was it more a straightforward one?
It's a constant evolution, even these days, right? We're talking about $100 billion target addressable market in cybersecurity across different facets that we play in today, whether it's endpoint security, cloud security, data analytics, and security analytics. And then I think the opportunity with AI security is also pretty big. TAM really means that you're talking to pretty much every single company in the world, from the smallest SMB and all the way to the biggest Fortune 10. They are part of that TAM. So how you unlock that, how you build your avenues to go to market, it's much more intricate than saying, let's build an enterprise go to market. It just is. And we, I think, evolved over time, and we always figured, hey, there's a big untapped opportunity here, something we can unlock and dislocate from the incumbents. Let's go and invest some time there. The enterprise, I think, was the obvious one. I mean, obviously, you want to go after the biggest customers out there, but what do you go after with? Are you going there with endpoint protection or cloud security, or can you land as standalone? Do you need one platform? There's a lot of different considerations as you go about and unlock parts of the market. So it's a constant evolution. I think it has to be a constant evolution pretty much for every company out there. I think it's a continuous iteration. And you get some points where you see a major fit and a major click and high ROI. So you double down. But in essence, our go-to-market has been for a while, and definitely today, it's very multi-pronged. I mean, there's so many different areas, so many different geographies, different offerings, different packages, different bundles. You got the service providers, the MSSP space, you got GSIs, you got hyperscalers. Like there's a lot that goes into what you call go to market, and it's rarely just a singular thing that works and that's it.
Yeah, okay, so you mentioned different products and different markets, and I have one last question about that before we moving on to Álvaro. I attended the last RSA conference. I was at the first row when you talked in the main stage, and although I missed your formal party, it was fascinating to hear about the next big evolution of Purple AI, Athena, and in simple terms for all the audience, it essentially brings agentic AI capabilities to security and operation teams. But I'm curious, how long does it take to build a product like that? And what were some of the obstacles and challenges that you faced?
I missed that party too, but that's not the important bit. Athena for us, and I think even more broadly, I sincerely believe cybersecurity is going to look tremendously different in the quality, even the next 24 months. And we started working on Purple, I would say, right at the onset of ChatGPT, right? The moment that we saw the scale in which this technology is going. By the way, I don't know if anybody remembers, but ChatGPT was there. It was writing songs, and everybody made fun of it before it made its way to like version 3.5, which I think then all of us saw very clearly the opportunity and what type of tremendous technology this will be. But I think from that onset, we started playing around with how do we integrate these transformer technologies into what was up until then a very set neural network type of a system for us. And I think it was a couple of RSAs ago, we were the first company to showcase a generative AI-based security capability with Purple. That's where Purple was born. And ever since that point, we basically have constantly worked to push it to the bleeding edge. Like we understood very quickly that this is going to be a constant moving target. Like if you're building for the capabilities you see today, you're behind. If you're building for the capabilities that you're seeing maybe one generation forward, you probably are still behind. So it's really going to be about how much you can push the envelope and imagine what would be the art of the possible in, I would say, an acceptable horizon. Everybody can pick what their acceptable horizon, and I got my own acceptable horizon. And that's how we're thinking about development. So when the public sees something like Athena, this is probably already stale in our book. Like we've moved past Athena, but we're constantly staying, I think, in constant touch with the market to also show how we take some of the intrinsic capabilities from what we're planning forward for to show tangible outcome for customers right here, right now. And I think that seeing what's happening today with kind of cybersecurity and agentic capabilities, there's a lot of companies that are just trying to monetize it as best as they can, right? They'll come up with like a siloed piece of automation to show value in a very specific and narrow band and say, this is what I can bring you today and pay me some dollars for it. And I'm going to take your alerts from 1,000 alerts a day processed to 500 alerts per day processed. And I mean, to me, it's not as exciting. I think that you can do that, but I think the magnitude of change that is going to happen would mean that a lot of these things are going to become irrelevant or maybe a small piece of a much bigger system very, very fast, all the way to complete security capabilities. I think that things that you see today sold as very successful products in cloud security could be completely obfuscated to the point of a prompt to a system that can replace a whole class of product. Like, I don't know, all of CSPM can turn into show me misconfigurations, solve misconfigurations. And I think that's definitely going to be possible in the next couple of years. I think human supervision then becomes a very, very big tenet in how we operate in that world. But largely, when you think about Athena, when you think about Purple, when you think about all these capabilities, they're, to me, at this point in time, they're always on a continuum. There's no finite state. It's not done. It's not started. It's always ongoing. And we invest a ton in innovation. Like for us, that's the lifeblood of what we do. We've consistently brought new technologies, new approaches, new concepts into cybersecurity that many others have copied over time. Which to me, by the way, that's also a good outcome. Like if Microsoft replicates some of the stuff that we do and takes it to 100 million businesses, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's also a win in my book. Everybody's more secure. Do I like competing with them? That's a different story. But at the end of the day, I think what progresses security forward for all of us, that's the ultimate goal for SentinelOne. And thus, we are focused on innovation. We're focused on customer outcomes, focused on being the most secure company in the world.
Yeah, that's for sure. And so what I will take is basically everyone talk about agentic AI, but all the corporation like SentinelOne already developed the next big thing in order to not to stay behind. So fascinating. And Tomer, I got a bunch of more questions, but Álvaro here is also a great question to ask you. So thank you so much. And Álvaro, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Yossi. So, Tomer, you talked about it in already, which is what you're doing to develop a new product and how to stay ahead of the curve. But what you've described with AI, meaning things in particular cybersecurity are going to change completely very, very quickly. How do you stay ahead of the curve? How do you keep innovating when all these things that are happening could destroy everything that you've worked for past products?
I think you become the curve. That's the ultimate aspiration. And if you look at our journey over time, we're the first company to integrate data analytics into cybersecurity. We're the first company to come up with AI-based protection. We're the first company to showcase the concept of an all-inclusive data lake. We're the first company that have put together all these concepts with hyper automation. So I think throughout time we were naturally always on the bleeding edge. I think it's very deep in the company's DNA. And I think more than that, I mean, we got some tremendous talent. We got pluralistic point of view. So we're not locked into any one motion or one specific dogma, if you may. We couple that also with being very current. So SentinelOne is an investor in Anthropic. It's also an investor in Scale AI. And we got a very active venture arm that constantly looks at startups, what's coming, new technologies. We got an innovation team that all they do is constantly work and uncover new technologies. Some of our patents are some of the leading in the space. We do M&A whenever we please. So all in all, when we are staying current with the things, work very closely, by the way, with the frontier companies. So a lot of these things eventually, I think, culminate in a point of view that allows you to keep that innovation mode. I think what also happens a lot with larger companies is that they are getting so locked in to their current platform needs and day to day and all that stuff and generating revenue and generating profits that sometimes innovation takes a back seat. And here, given that I'm a first-time CEO, the mandate that we put and the pledge that we put for SentinelOne is to really balance these two things. It cannot be all about profit making and revenue and all of that. Certainly should be a good part of it. And thus, SentinelOne has been one of the fastest growing companies on the public market for many years now. So in terms of revenue growth, it's hard to say we're lagging behind. Also, in terms of profitability, we've managed to do all of what I just discussed while inflicting from a pretty significant loss-making company into what is now becoming a pretty significant cash generation company, cash flow positive. So I think it's really in how you decide what you want to do. And as long as you factor all these things and you give them the right weight in kind of the overarching path that you kind of set to accomplish, I think it's a matter of choice. But sometimes it gets lost with bigger companies, it gets lost with other priorities. But for us, again, we were born with AI. This feels very natural to us. And we're also, I think, not afraid to take pretty bold steps forward. And instead of just constantly trying to appease the current state and, oh, these guys have launched agentic, we must have agentic as well. A lot of the stuff that you see today is really what I would define as transient. Like these are kind of minute offerings. I'll give you one tangible example. I mean, I think if we had this conversation about a year ago, all we would talk about is like Copilot and the chatbots, and that was all the rave, right? Everyone's rushing to deploy those. Those are going to make you so much more effective, so much more productive. And lo and behold, we're a year out. We're barely talking about like the Copilots. All the talk has become agentic. But I think, as you can imagine, a year will pass and we're probably going to be talking about agentic plus plus or whatever it is that's going to be, or autonomous agents or whatever you want to call it. So it's really important to, I think, remember that we're sometimes very locked to the present, and companies sometimes over rotate on the present because they have to show that they're doing something. They have to show that they can monetize it. They have to show that they're part of the AI revolution. And sometimes that is, I think, just not the best path forward on how you drive innovation.
Okay, this everything that you just told me sounds great, and it seems like a really, really good pitch. So let me take you back to the moment where you had a great record-breaking IPO. The company was valued at over $11 billion. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey, talking with investors? What did they like so much about SentinelOne? If you can concentrate with everything that you just told me.
I think they loved the fast growing profile of the company, which has been like that for quite a few years. We IPO'd, what was it, like 4 years ago now? We were about $100 million plus in like revenue to they were at $1 billion. So like in 4 years, getting from 100 to $1 billion was, or close to $1 billion, was really, really remarkable. I think that's the trajectory that some of these investors had imagined. I think in terms of the technology, people saw like real, true differentiation there. So I think it was a deep tech company growing incredibly fast in a wide open market that's incredibly big. All of those are, I think, great recipes for any company.
And obviously, it's gone very well. And now you have a scale. So now the decisions you make are slightly different. But back then, when you were growing very quickly and you continued to innovate, what is the best approach to continue to innovate while you're growing?
Again, I think it really is a matter of choice. I mean, you really have to make conscious decisions about continuously investing in areas that might not be immediately yielding, because that is really innovation in many ways. You're kind of investing in the future. It's not going to yield anything in the present. So if you can kind of imagine your overarching P&L as a company, if you can sustain that level of forward-leaning development from your existing status quo and your current growth, then I think that's probably the way to go. And that's largely how I designed over the years SentinelOne, because I fully believe that the moment you're going to stop innovating is the moment you become less and less relevant. And nothing is binary. You don't drop off a cliff immediately, but I think you can find very distinct correlation between level of innovation and deceleration in relevance, let's call it. And if you innovate less, I think over time you lose steam. And some other companies have been very effective in mitigating that by acquiring companies, right? I mean, that's another way to compensate for lack of innovation. And I think that's also a valid way forward. It works sometimes better, sometimes not as well. But I do think that core concepts and pushing forward with innovation is, to me, one of the most important things here, if not the most important thing.
And while you're pushing innovation, it was also touched upon earlier that you do M&A when you can or when you want. And it turns out SentinelOne was one of the first companies to ever buy an analytics firm. It seems that you, unlike other competitors, you chart your own path. You don't copy things that are going. So when you acquire a scaler, what drove that decision? And in general, how do you approach M&A?
Yeah, look, it's very, I would say it's very individual. Like every M&A that we've done was for a certain purpose and to achieve something specific. So I don't think we have like a one overarching boilerplate to how we do M&A. In the case of Scalar, I think it became very clear to me very early on that our problem will shift, or generally the problem is not with malware, the problem is with data. Because at the end of the day, our algorithms are only going to be as effective as what we see and what we process and what we learn on. And in turn, I also felt that if the kind of core currency that we work with in security is eventually the data that stems from the machines that we monitor, then why not take data from other sources? It doesn't have to be only from machine, doesn't have from our machines, doesn't has to be only from our sensors. So if we actually had the ability to have this central repository that can then monitor every aspect of the enterprise, so we will effectively be shifting our models from protecting a singular endpoint to protecting the entire business, and no matter what that business entails. But to do that, you really have to have a very, very, very fast data store that can, in my view, or that has to, in my view, support real-time processing. And real-time processing is something that doesn't exist today in cybersecurity. If you think about some of the existing solutions out there today in that same data analytics space, all the SEM aggregators and all that stuff, in essence, by the time the data gets into the SEM, it's already the past that you're looking at. And if you're seeing the adversaries, on the other hand, move to like seconds, milliseconds type of attacks, if it takes the signal a minute to get to the SEM, by the time you're looking at it, the attack is already over and you can't really do anything anymore. So my stance back then, and this is around 2019, I think, was that if we can progress cybersecurity to a real-time state, or as close as can be to a real-time state, we're going to be losing the war at some point in the future. And thus today, a lot of the emphasis of what we do is less about like, hey, let me agentically automate a couple of processes for you. It's more, let's make sure we're doing everything in real time. And that's a pretty significant overhead. So going back to the acquisition, we said, okay, how can we achieve something that can ingest the data immediately or as close as can be to real time, process it as fast as possible, and then orchestrate an action and close all that loop within a millisecond or a second. And then we went about and said, okay, we can build it potentially, but it's a heavy, heavy lift. And we're invested heavily in building security software. We're reverse engineering, we're doing research, threat intelligence, we got an entire endpoint footprint. It is not right now the core competency of what we do, even though we were already processing a ton of data into our own legacy built internally backend that we had. And we said, okay, let's POC technologies. And we went and we, I think, did discovery with about probably an order of magnitude of about 10, 15 different technologies, both in terms of maybe we should just OEM something. And potentially there's something interesting that we can afford because we were a private company. I think we were valued like $1.2 billion back then. So also our ability to acquire something was very, very limited. Most private companies have not traditionally been very big acquirers. I think we were one of the first, not one of the first, but I think we definitely made it more popular to think about acquisitions as a private entity. But we went on and we did this research type endeavor with POCing every technology out there, including the legacy SEM solutions and all of it, in kind of a bid to say, okay, maybe we should just OEM something on the back end and really kind of deal with other challenges. And then we saw two next generation technologies, two companies that were very interesting in their approach. And they were like $10 million ARR type companies, venture funded. And we started looking deeper and deeper, and we said, that stuff, it's working like petabyte scale in almost immediate terms. And this entire notion of like a query that takes minutes is a thing of the past. And I said to myself, I mean, look, if we can own that and start really focusing on how we get data into this very robust data lake, that can be the backbone of something much, much bigger than even endpoint protection. That could be a complete new reimagined way to think about an AI cybersecurity platform, right? A cybersecurity platform, but one that's driven by AI across every facet of it, not just endpoint or just cloud or just whatever. And that's why we kind of said, okay, let's go and acquire it. Have to tell you, it was highly non-trivial. Like it was hard to explain even to our own employees, like, why are we buying a data analytics company? Why is this really happening? But fast forward to today, I think it's probably one of the most important ingredients that we have today. And lo and behold, everybody else in our space have gone through that same journey, have built those data lakes, is trying to go through and consolidate cybersecurity into one singular platform. So probably was a pretty good call, I would say.
certainly is, and rewarding to see that people follow you. And thank you so much, Tomer. I'm going to pass on the microphone to Amado.
Tomer, staying on the subject of acquisitions, earlier you brought up how innovation, very much of it is just effectively investing into the future. Remaining on that, how do you approach the dilemma of continuing to sell an acquired company's products separately versus pausing for full integration?
It's a great question. And again, I would say it's very target dependent. I would say that every transaction could look a bit different. Sometimes you do very small acqui-hires, sometimes you're buying more established products with customer bases. So really, I would say there's an infinite different ways to think about acquisition and integration. To us, I always think that when you concentrate on the value that you can bring to the customer, you're probably finding the answers with that as a North Star. If the value to the customer is deep enough with the acquired target offering as it is, then maybe integration is not as important. If the value comes from streamlining our workflow, then maybe integration is much more important. If the value comes from a backend component that the customer doesn't even see, but makes their life a lot easier, then you do it any way you please because it's obfuscated away from the end customer anyways. So I really think it's very target dependent at the end of the day, but as long as you keep how do I show value to the customer in the shortest path possible, I think you'll find kind of the answer on how you integrate those.
Absolutely. Understand that utility all comes first. As a product manager in cybersecurity, something that I've seen is that the field is all about collaboration. Recently, SentinelOne partnered with CyberArk to tackle privileged access misuse using your AI-powered Singularity platform. How did this partnership come together?
Yeah, look, CyberArk is a great partner to us, and it's a great company. I think more broadly, we sincerely believe that cybersecurity is going to continue to be a very diversified space. And I think that philosophically, I sincerely believe in giving customers flexibility. Like, I'm not the type of CEO that will come in and say, to benefit from everything that SentinelOne does, you have to be all SentinelOne, wall to wall. It has to be only it. If you like a different product, forget about it. I can displace it for you. I think you have to sell on merit, right? And you have to build the best thing possible. And if the customer wants it, enjoys it, and gets the benefit from it, then it should acquire it from you. If there's something else that's best of breed or maybe even more tailored to that specific need, they should be able to use that. And I should be able to integrate it into my product, into my platform in the most seamless way possible. So to me, CyberArk, all these other ecosystem providers, my competitors, I want to be able to integrate into in the most seamless, frictionless way possible. And I think that largely that resonates with customers, especially when you come in and you just want to create, again, a better end result for the customer. And if I can do that by integrating into Microsoft Defender and getting Microsoft Defender telemetry into my data lake and then fixing configuration, responding, but giving you better AI-driven security, even if you're using Microsoft Defender and it's what you have, to me that's a good day and that's a good deal. Like, I don't have to come in and say, you got to rip it out, you got to use SentinelOne on the endpoint, otherwise we don't want to talk to you, or go talk to the platformization people because they are the only ones that are doing this kind of blanket approach that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. Again, we're focusing on building the best capabilities that we can, and we want customers to choose our capabilities because they're good, not because we're forcing them, and not because there's some monetary incentive there to get some stuff for free for the first year. If the stuff is good, then they're going to buy it, they're going to stay with it, they're going to enjoy it, and it's going to get them better protected. And I think that's the only thing we care about.
So we always prioritizing the value to the consumer. Speaking on SentinelOne's flexibility, you're now one of the sponsors of Formula One and also Madison Square Garden. I believe there's a tournament that you sponsored. Speaking of basketball, do you have a favorite basketball team?
Ever since the days of the Chicago Bulls, I don't think I've zeroed in on like a specific team, but obviously I live in the Bay Area, so Golden State is our go-to team. And obviously Stephen Curry is an amazing player. But we love the Knicks as well. That's why you see us in Madison Square Garden as well. But yeah, I mean, all in all, the NBA has been changing also in the past few years. So it's really exciting to see all the new talent.
Absolutely. Your journey, as I said earlier, began with a software engineer, and obviously now you're the CEO of a high-performing company. Along your journey, has there been a particular mentor or a particular piece of advice that has helped you along the way?
I never really had a mentor per se. Obviously, there's folks on our board that have been with me and with us for many years, and I would definitely treat them as mentors. I generally, I've always been a bit more distinct in my thought process. So for me, advice is something that I always hear and I always listen. I don't always take. And there's a big difference. I think there's a lot of folks that don't even listen, like they don't really care what others are saying as much. I always keep my mind open, but I don't always factor in advice because I feel like at some point, I don't remember who said it, which one of you, that we have rarely copied others and have really set to our own path. And I think a lot of it is really staying true, to your own originality and to your own thought process. And in the moment you start just replicating others, I think that becomes that your thinking becomes very tainted. With that, there's a ton of great stuff that people have done over the years and amazing experiences you can only learn from, especially me. I mean, being again a first timer in this, I mean, I'm sure there's CEOs that are 10 times better than what I would ever aspire to be. So I constantly learn from, I think, experiences, and I try to distill how they are relevant to me, not just blanketing best practices and saying, oh yeah, we got to do it this way because X has done it this way in the past, but really, how do we take the learnings and how do we integrate them and how they're applicable to what we're doing. So thus, I think it's been a slightly, I think, different mode for me in that regard.
And I think that those last piece of words is a terrific point to end with. Passing back to Yossi.
Yeah, so Tomer, maybe a last question. Do you have any hobbies outside of work?
I really like playing basketball. With that, I'm getting older and older, so it's getting harder and harder, I guess. But yeah, I obviously I try to spend as much time as I can with my kids, but playing basketball once a week if I can, that's also a great deal. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. And so, Tomer, thank you so much for joining us today. We learned so much from you. We appreciate you trusting us and just like joining us for the call. So thank you. And for everybody else in the audience, stay tuned. We have other amazing episodes with CTO and CPO of Lean to armies and a bunch of other actually VCs like Anderson Horowitz and Insight and Index. So stay tuned. And Tomer, thank you so much again.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Appreciate it.